Hello and welcome back to Suspended Animation. I'm your host, Dennis Bithoulkas, and it's time for another episode of Is It Worth My Time? This time around, Stranger Things Season 4, Part 1. And the reason why I started laughing because I just realized I didn't plug in my hardwire my internet again to the computer here. So I'm on Wi-Fi again. I just realized it's not a big deal, but sometimes things drops out, and it's a little bit easier to have it plugged in. Anyway, technical issues aside, let me take care of some business first, and then we'll get down to it. If you like what you see here, like, share, and subscribe. If you're still on the fence about subscribing, take a look at the video that pops up at the very end here. YouTube takes the algorithms of all the stuff you've been watching and tries to match it as best as possible. So one of the videos, my vast video library, and pops it up here just for you. And if you like what you see there, hit that subscribe button down below there. And if you can, hit the like button, the share button as well. And if you're feeling lucky, you can hit that bell down below, and YouTube may or may not notify you when I come on live. So what you should do is go over to suspendedfanimation.com, take a look at the schedule. I post it up every week, and also I have all the links to my social media there and all the links to my pages as well. Hey Warren, what's going on? How's it going, man? Warren's a good friend of mine. Uh, Traveling back and forth between LA and here in the Bay Area. So, all righty. So I'm gonna pre-go. I usually do a spoiler-free version of this first, for Is It Worth My Time? But I figure by season 4, if you've already watched the first 3 seasons, you already know what's going on with this stuff. So you've probably watched, season 4 at this point. So I'm just gonna go straight into the spoilers. All right. So spoiler alert. I'm gonna spoil the first part 1 anyway. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. Come on back. This will be a video. You can comment down below in the comment section, giving you enough time to hit pause, whatever you're gonna do, all that kind of stuff. All right. All righty. So, where do we leave off at the end of season 3? Season 3, Hopper is supposedly dead. We know that actually he ended up in Russia, the USSR, because it's the mid 80s at this point. Because he went through the portal when they were destroying the Soviet uh, generator into the Upside Down, right? Um, and Owens ended up moving Joyce and her family, along with 11, out to California to get away from Hawkins because, Hawkins has just been a really shitty place for everyone involved at that point. So, uh, yeah. So, Will, Joyce, 11, and, and Jonathan have all gone out to California, and yeah, I know the kids have aged, and well, I mean, yeah, it's been a couple of years. So, I'm fairly sure the next one, season 5, which is the last season, by the way, is they gotta jump to, like, the late 80s because, I mean, some of these kids, what was it I read someplace that made me laugh? It said some of the Stranger Things kids look like they're on their 2nd marriage, and I started laughing 'cause that's pretty much where we're at. Especially Lucas, man. Lucas looks like he's, tending bar now at this point. I mean, shit, he's grown up quite a bit. So, oh, man. So, yeah, this one, where do I start on this one? So we've got people in Hawkins, we've got people in California. Uh, Joyce ends up getting a mysterious package from Russia with a Russian doll in there, and she calls Murray about it. And she ends up breaking open the doll with it looks like a ransom note, really, is what it looks like. But she knows that Hopper is alive and he's in Russia, and there's a phone number to call and all this stuff. And so we got 3 different stories that are going on here, or 3 different viewpoints, I guess you could say. And Joyce and Murray end up going to Alaska to pay to get Hopper released. So they're going off on their own little mission. We've got the California crew going off on their own little mission. And then, of course, we have the Hawkins crew going off on their own little mission. Because in Hawkins, we're having people having, they're hearing voices. And Chrissy, a cheerleader, ends up, and she ends up getting all her bones broken in weird ways, floats up to the ceiling and has her eyes sucked into her head and dies that way after hearing these voices. And the person who is blamed for this, of course, is the weirdo Eddie Munson, who's a new character who is the head of the Hellfire Club, which is a Dungeons and Dragons club, which, of course, Dustin and Mike belong to. And oh, man, that whole thing leading up to her, floating to the ceiling and getting broken and everything up like that, with Eddie Munson, being this, we've all had an Eddie Munson in our school at some point in time, right? And, he, of course, is telling, Dustin and Mike they need to find a third person to replace Lucas because Lucas is now a jock. He's, on the basketball team and doesn't wanna play Dungeons& and Dragons. Well, he does wanna play Dungeons& and Dragons, but he also wants to play basketball. He wants to become a popular kid at that point. Um, and they, of course, recruit Erica, his sister, who is just as big of a nerd as everyone else is. So, yeah, we've got all that going on as well. But the whole thing with Eddie Munson being hunted down by the basketball team, because of course, Chrissy is the girlfriend of the head of the basketball team, who is, and I've got to look at my notes here, Jason Carver, who is a young Republican. You can totally tell he's a fucking young Republican. He's making speeches at the pep rally. He's making speeches at the, town hall meetings, things of that nature, getting people riled up. And he's essentially forming a militia to go after Eddie Munson, who's on the run at this point. Um, in the meantime, in California, 11 is not doing so well socially. She is trying, but she's not picking up on social cues. She is lying also to Mike in her letters, and Will is trying to get her to tell him the truth, but she's not, of course. And Mike's coming out, of course, for a visit during spring break. And of course, Joyce and Murray have left and left Jonathan in charge of everybody during spring break. And yeah, 11 has her Carrie moment, if you will. Um, and she ends up attacking the her abuser with a roller skate and hits her in the head. Honestly, that girl Angela deserved it. I'm just gonna say this right now. Angela fucking deserved it, and probably a little bit worse than that. So, yeah, I liked Argyle as well. So Argyle, of course, being the stoner who Jonathan hangs out with because Jonathan is getting stoned a lot. Which, after everything that's happened in the first 3 seasons, I don't blame Jonathan at all. I'd be getting fucking toasted myself all the time. Um, but we start seeing that what's happening in Hawkins and what's happening in to 11, what happened to 11 are tied together. And as we're going through all of this stuff, all of these stories are getting closer and closer together to merging together. And we see that there's two factions in the government. One is, of course, Owens and Brenner, who want 11 to, they think that she can save the world again because the Upside Down is still not fully closed. Vecna is part of this. Um, and then we have another faction who thinks that 11 is the problem and needs to eliminate her. And so they are, of course, are going after her as much as they can. So 11 is needs to get her powers back, and Owens brings her to Brenner, and Brenner has recorded everything that's happened, and 11 has memory lapses, of course, at this point, and she's in the submersion tank, reliving all these things to get her powers back. Again, this was a lot of stuff. I mean, some of these episodes were at least an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours. So it's almost like watching a movie as you're going through each episode here. And everything was fairly coherent. I have to admit, everything works well. The whole thing with Joyce and Murray getting kidnapped, drugged, of course, by the guy that was supposed to free Hopper, and of course turned around and didn't. And then them having to break into the gulag, of course, to in Kamchatka. For those of you playing Risk, in the 80s, a lot of us did. You know what Kamchatka is? It's part of the Russian peninsula that's closest to the U.S. Over in that little land bridge over there. So of course that's where they're going. And Penn says, I was surprised the length of each episode made it a little harder to binge. I actually felt it was fairly good pacing, to tell you the truth. They did a good job, and they didn't have to cut out anything. Really. So in the meantime, in Hawkins, the group, finds Eddie Munson, of course. They know he didn't do it. Um, Nancy is on the trail of what really happened. She gets wind of some guy named Victor Creel, who, of course, is played by Robert Englund, because we get a little bit of Freddy Krueger stuff in here too, because he invades people's dreams. And as we are coming along further and further, we find out that Victor went through the same kind of process in the 50s, 59 roughly, and his family was all killed in the same way except for him, and his son ended up in a coma and supposedly died, but he didn't. Henry Creel ends up being taken by Brenner. He was number one, by the way, in the scheme of telekinetic kids. And we see that Henry ended up becoming an orderly in the Hawkins facility, and was basically pushing 11 to get her powers to grow. And Keith says, you played Risk as a kid? Color me surprised. Yeah, I know, really. Did I play Risk as a kid? I don't know. Take a look at the shit that's behind me. Think again. Um, and we find out that Vecna is actually Henry Creel. That 11 created him essentially because she pulled out his inhibitor chip. He's the one that murdered all the kids in the Hawkins facility. It was not 11 that murdered them. And she opened up the first portal by pushing Victor into the upside down. And he gets burned horribly as he falls into the upside down and becomes Vecna and starts gaining his powers. And he says that every time he kills someone, he takes in their power, he takes in who they are. They all reside in his head. And now it's going to be a battle between 11 and Henry, or Vecna, if you will. And yeah, we got the crew from California that are making their way over to Hawkins to join the Hawkins group. They're trying to, well, no, well, now they're actually trying to get to 11, who's in Ruth, Nevada, because they stopped on the way to meet Dusty Bun's girlfriend, Susie, to find out where this location was of this secret base. In the meantime, um, one of the colonels there has been interrogating one of Owen's men to give up the location of where 11 is. And of course, they've gotten it now at this point. So now it's a race of time to get to the Ruth, Nevada location to warn 11, who's now gotten her powers back, before she gets killed by the other faction of the government, and then also save her friends and Hawkins as well. So, yeah. CBM says there's so much evidence about this all, but it was still surprised how the whole Henry one Vecna thing happened. Yeah, they did a good job of piecing it all together. So there is one other thing that's buried in here as well, is Will and Mike. Will is gay. I'm just gonna say this right now. He has a crush on Mike. He has a big crush on Mike, and it's been, I mean, telegraphed completely. He's acting very bitchy towards Mike when Mike came to visit 11. And the reason for this is that Mike only sees 11. He doesn't see Will anymore. And Will is kind of upset by that. And Will has been telegraphing this whole thing. He's like, yeah, have you ever, wanted to tell your friends something, but you couldn't tell them, and blah, blah. And he's just basically kind of going through this whole procedure at this thing. Pence, I totally agree about Will ever since season one, even if they never go there. They're going to go there with this. I'm fairly sure they're going to go there with this. 'Cause, good God, if they telegraphed it hard on this one, so, I mean oh, and then the whole thing with, uh, the whole, Nancy, Robin, Jonathan and fuck, now I'm just blanking on his name now, Steve, that whole dynamic going on too, it's just oh, that's just making me laugh, it really is. But, yeah, we have, of course, Eddie Munson, Nancy, uh, Steve, and of course, Robin all go to the Upside Down because they go through the water gate, the gate that is, under the lake there and Lover's Lake, and, they find out that wherever there's a murder, that's when a portal opens up, whenever Vecna murders somebody, there's a portal there, and they realize that there's a portal at the where Chrissy died at the trailer park, so they go back to get out of that location because the water one is, of course, guarded now by these vampire bat things. And as they're getting out, Nancy, as she's climbing out, Vecna realizes that she's trying to climb out, and he traps her in his world. That's when we find out that he is actually Henry and that he was number one as well. And this is where everything kind of comes together at this point. So yeah, so now we have Steve and Nancy are pretty much trapped in the underground or the upside down, and you know Robin and Eddie were able to get out. So that's where we're at on all of this. Again, part 2 is gonna come in July 1st is where we're gonna get part 2. I can't wait to see what this wrap up is gonna be, and then, of course, season 5 is gonna come next year, I believe, is where that's gonna come out, and that's gonna be it for the entire, series. Season 5 is gonna be the end of this, and they're gonna wrap everything up, which is gonna be good. So, um some of the things, I'll say right now in the '80s, nobody said that whole thing about I see you, who you are," and all that. Nobody ever said that. That didn't come out until, like, the 2010 where people say, "I see you, I see who you are," that kinda stuff. That was something that, Lucas was telling Max. And then also Hopper, breaking down and realizing just how, opening up to this Russian dude about his life and how much of a fuck up he is. No, sorry, it's the '80s. You never did that. You kept it all bottled inside. You never said anything like that. So, I mean, there's some things that are very, very 2020-ish. I'll say right now within this, they're not '80s things, and it kinda threw me out of it, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not it. Sorry. No, that's not the '80s." But I understand they're trying to do it for the viewers that, never lived in the '80s, that, were probably born in, this millennium and not the previous one. I understand that, but there's just some things I just kinda shake my head. I'm like, "Nope, that didn't happen. Nope, that never would have happened either." And also, I'm just gonna say this right now, I really don't like Kate Bush. Uh, so that song coming back into vogue again, good God, why? You could have picked any number of '80s songs for her to like, but the Kate Bush song for Max to bring her out of it, fuck, why? Why? Yeah, and of course, Max still dealing with Billy's death, and of course she's going to. She's traumatized by it, and so is it worth your time? Now I've gone through 20 minutes of this roughly here. Yes, it is worth your time, especially if you're a fan of the series. It is wrapping things up nicely here. It is, I guess you could say, converging on all of these story threads that have been out there that need to come together, and we're getting a really good we're getting a good tie up of all these loose ends to these stories, and I kind of like it. I really do. And I have to say, I realize I'm just really fucking old because now, so Robin is actually the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. Chrissy is the daughter of Casper Van Dien. You remember from Starship Troopers, and his first wife. Uh, so all these actors' kids now are making, from the 80s and 90s, are now acting in a nostalgia show that's based on mid 80s, you know, stuff, which I just find funny. I really do. So, ah, so good stuff. I mean, it's definitely worth your time. Take a look at it. Like again, like I said, if you're a fan of the show, if you have been a fan of the show, I know there was grumblings about season three, and season three didn't end the way you wanted it to, and blah 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 blah. This kind of makes up for it. And also, they go back about Nancy and Barb. They even bring up Barb, who's the first victim of the the upside down, and how Nancy just kind of walked away from Barb while she was getting sucked under. And Vecna kind of uses that against her and says, "Yeah, you still feel guilt for that, don't you? Well, you should." And yeah, so we kind of bring up all these old wounds that all these characters have, and they need to deal with it as well. So that's actually another good thing about this season, is they are closing up some loopholes that you think some of these characters have forgotten about, or that the writers have forgotten about, and they really haven't. They just haven't gotten around to them as of yet, and they were bringing them up in this season. So really good stuff at that point. So let me see what everyone's saying here in the chat. No one cried except for Angela. um, let's see. CBM says he has that aggressively Hitler Youth light white boy haircut. Yeah, well, that was an '80s haircut. CBM. You're talking about. I always have to look at my name. Jason Carver, the basketball player. Yes, he really was. He was totally a young Republican haircut is what he had going on, which is also the Hitler Youth haircut. I agree with you. Keith Hamilton says, "Yeah, you played Risk as a kid." Yes, CBM says there's so much evidence about all this is this all, but I was so surprised how the Henry. Yeah, we already talked about that. Susie's family. Yes, Susie's family was fucking funny. The whole thing. I mean, how many kids did that guy have, man? And he's having his oldest, Eden, watch them, and also Susie, I guess, was supposed to be watching them as well. But that one feral kid who just kept going for the electrical panel all the time, I'm like, what the fuck was that about? That's totally a John Hughes. I mean, they copied a John Hughes movie trope for all of that, which is pretty funny as well. Uh, but yeah, they did a good job with Susie's family, and how her computer got confiscated because she was dating an agnostic. Oh, Dusty Buns. Uh, and that whole thing too is just disturbing. Her calling him Dusty Buns. But Ian and Argyle, getting into the back of the van there and hotboxing was pretty funny as well. Argyle, somebody on Twitter actually likened him to Poochie from The Simpsons. Uh, and I was like, yeah, he is kind of Poochie from The Simpsons. I agree. Yeah. I mean, they kind of forced him in there. He's okay, but he doesn't really fit entirely. Um, so he has his moments though. So what else do I have going on for the rest of this week? Well, excuse me. It's gonna be a busy week this week. So tomorrow, because I thought it was gonna be Friday, but it's actually tomorrow, is episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Episode 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's gonna be at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, not 6 p.m., but 5 p.m. because I'm off tomorrow. So Thursday I'm gonna be off. Friday is gonna be episode 1 of season 3 of The Boys. Saturday is gonna be episodes 2 and 3 of The Boys. Sunday is going to be the Sunday edition of Saturday Morning Blast Off, where I take the genre news of the weekend and genre stuff you guys want to talk about. And we talk about it. Monday, I'm going to be off, and then we roll back around again to Tuesday to Is It Worth My Time? And I don't know what I'm doing as of yet, but I will think of something. Um, we'll see what happens there. So, as always, you can always go take a look at suspendedfanimation.com. Take a look at the schedule. It's up there. It changes that every week. So, with that said, I'm going to let you guys go for the night. Thank you to everybody who joined me tonight in the chat. And thank you if you made it this far in the video. If you're still on the fence about subscribing, take a look at the video that pops up at the very end here. YouTube takes the algorithms of all the stuff you've been watching and tries to match it as best as possible to one of the videos in my vast video library and pops it up here just for you. And if you like what you see there, hit that subscribe button down below there. And if you can, hit that like button and the share button as well. And again, like I said, if you want to know when I'm going to be on live again next, go over to suspendedfanimation.com. Take a look at the schedule I have up there. I change it every week. Also, I have all the links to my social pages, social media, and my pages as well, like Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. I haven't really posted anything on Instagram in a while. I probably should, but I just haven't. Um, so with that said, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you, everyone. And don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you may wind up in a upside down because you've gone through the water gate and you've been attacked by vampire bats, and because they're guarding the water gate on the other side. And oh, not a good thing. Anyway, have a good rest of your night. Stay safe, be well, take care. Get those vaccine shots, get those this boosters as well, because it doesn't work without the boosters. And stay safe out there, everyone. Have a good rest of your night, and I'll see you again tomorrow for Obi-Wan. Until then, have a good one. Thanks, everyone. Good night.